Well, hello, and welcome to Coding with Jess, where you get to code along with me while I build a thing. So in case you're joining me for the first time, my name is Jess Martin. I do applied research at a company called Fission Codes. You can find more out about me on my website at jessmart.in. I'll show you that real quick. Let's see. Hope you're doing really great on this Wednesday. Yeah, you can find out more about me on my website at jessmart.in. If you haven't done this before with me, we are going to work for the next 2 hours on a problem, coding something up together, learning something together. And what we'll do is we'll work in 25-minute blocks with 5-minute breaks. So I'm going to start a Pomodoro timer in just a second here. We're going to work for 25 minutes. I'm going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to do that in 4 Pomodoros with 5-minute breaks. So that equals 2 hours roughly. I'll also be paying attention in the chat. If you drop questions in the chat, I'll try to address those or comments or respond to those. Sometimes it takes me a few seconds to notice them, so it may not be quite real time because I'm kind of focused over here, working on code on this laptop. On this computer. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk about what we're working on today. Okay, so over the last few months, I've been working with a company called Fission Codes, and Fission.codes is building a really interesting set of technologies for building the future of the internet, is kind of the way that I think of it. They're building a decentralized layer, a set of protocols, which lets us replace some of the foundational elements of the internet that kind of enable us to build new kinds of software, which is what I'm most interested in. New kinds of software, new computing interfaces, and Fission is really doing that sort of ground level work that I think will enable that kind of work, that kind of computing interfaces to be built in the future. So for example, they're building decentralized data layer, a decentralized authentication layer, and then a decentralized compute layer, which I think allows us to build new kinds of software. So I've been diving into this whole idea of decentralized applications. I've been using Fission's WebNative library that you can go and find out on the interwebs. WebNative Fission. Really interesting library that provides decentralized authentication and decentralized file storage on top of IPFS, and using Fission's UCAN protocol or a protocol that Fission contributes to called UCAN. So anyway, we've been working with WebNative library the last couple of sessions to build a decentralized blogging application. And before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and start our first Pomodoro. Make sure that timer is running. Thank you, Voito, for this awesome Pomodoro timer. Tomato 2 on the App Store if you're looking for a really simple, clean Pomodoro timer. Cool, so let's go over to the whiteboard and talk about what we've built and where we are. Also note, Wells has big plans. My 4-year-old snuck into my office this morning. He told my wife that he's like, I'm gonna go sneak into Dad's office and write on his whiteboard. And this is what he wrote. Wells has big plans, which I thought was super cute. So I'm leaving it on the whiteboard. Anyway, all right. So what are we building today? Or what have we built so far? So we're building a decentralized blogging application that stores files in IPFS. So I've kind of been representing IPFS, or the internet, as this giant cloud, and then IPFS, I'm representing it incorrectly as a giant block, because really what this should be thought of as a network of nodes that each is running the IPFS client to store things on it. And our little Mumbler application right now is split into 2 different applications. One is the thing that writes the files to the file system, and this is called Mumbler. It's in a repo called Mumbler on under my GitHub. You can go check that out. Tiny little WebNative backed application to write a file name and some file stuff to the IPFS system. And then we have another system that that right now is called Mumbler Generator. And what Mumbler Generator does is it reads the Markdown files from the file system, and then it's static site generator. And so it reads these Markdown files, this writes Markdown files, And then it produces HTML, CSS, and then we have mumbler.com. Kidding. But we have the blog that has been generated from the blog post we've written. Now, some interesting things about this that I've been discussing is that, which is kind of cool, is that you can write to the IPFS file system in lots of different ways. Fission has like a nice little tool called Drive, which I've been using mainly as like a web admin inspector tool that allows me to inspect the contents of IPFS. And you could actually write those Markdown files from Drive, not from Mumbler, and they would still get processed by Mumbler Generator and go to mumbler.com. You could write a syncing service that works like Dropbox, that like syncs files to your desktop and your local file system, and you could edit and update and write and create and delete those Markdown files in IPFS, and then as this static site generator, which is disconnected from it, runs on those Markdown files, it then generates our HTML and CSS. So what do we have working today? Let me show you what we've got working now that you kind of understand the high level architecture, and then we can talk about sort of today's goal. So what we have working so far, and then like I said, we'll get to today's goal, is, let me go ahead and open iTerm. Do I have, no, in the wrong directory here. Mumbler, and then we'll go, so there's Mumbler, and then Mumbler Generator are our two things. Let me make sure I've got the most recent stuff. Let me see what's standing out there. The tool versions file. I work on this on two different machines, and they have some weird tool version stuff. Yes, this is a versions thing I ran into last time. This is a really interesting, okay, there's two really interesting things we get to talk about and work on today. One is versioning, and the other is metadata, file metadata, and talk about how IPFS handles that, how we should think about handling that as we're storing things, and then we get to implement it. So that's going to be fun. Okay, so Mumbler, let me read me. Oh man, I don't even have how to start my own thing. Let's see. I need to document in the README how to start this application. Looks like it's build dev, npm run dev. Open a browser and localhost 3000. Boom. All right, so we've got this nice little interface right here that lets us write a title, a body, and hit publish, and that will write a file to the IPFS file system. And then we have over here our Mumbler Generator, which I probably didn't document how that runs either. Nope, I didn't. So npm run default is the thing that this does. And then once you've run the default, I think it's going to update a public directory, ls public. Yeah, with new index HTML and that kind of stuff. So I can just go into public and do an npx serve, which npx is like a way of executing a node package without installing it, without doing an npm install. And serve is just a nice little, like, serve this directory as with a web server. So now if you go to localhost 5000, you'll see that we have these blog posts with some question marks over here. And yeah, that's our index.html is running. So we can now, I could write a file here and then rerun our, oh, that's right. Okay, so there are some changes out here that I would want to stash if I was going to show, but we're going to talk about what those changes are in a second. So I'm not going to stash them away. I was in the middle of something a couple days ago and did not commit at the end of it. Shame on me. But anyway, so we have Mumbler working, and we have a generator that is generating something. There's clearly some missing features here and some things that we want to change. So what are we working on today? I like, when I'm working on any project, but particularly a coding project, I like to start off by like writing up sort of like my high level objective for this work block, and then kind of breaking that down into tasks that I can hopefully accomplish. And the reason for this is that it's really easy to get distracted and go down a rabbit hole when doing development of like, oh, I need to upgrade this or change that. And the sort of during the planning phase of my work block, I can kind of set the bounds or like the guardrails for this working session. And that keeps me focused during the working session on within those guardrails. And frankly, it means that there's less that I have to think about, because I can go back to my checklist and be like, okay, is the thing that I'm working on right now on the checklist? Am I making progress towards completing things on the checklist? Or am I making progress towards today's goal? So anyway, practice I like to do. You'll notice last week's our goal was to get an end-to-end setup working, write a blog post in Mumbler, view it on the web. We did that. It's ugly. Oh, and also, like, check it out, guys. Check it out. Mumbler.netlify.app. It's deployed. Sabading. So yeah, we actually have a deployed application on a URL. We'll make it a fun URL at some point, but it's working. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. So today's goal. What do we want to do today? So I think the thing I want to focus on today is what I was saying about file metadata. We're going to deep dive on this, but the reason we need to think about file metadata is that we want to show timestamps next to each post. If you remember from a few times ago, I'm modeling this little, in fact, I'm straight up using Linus's CSS as well. Modeling this little application after Linus's application called the stream. The stream gives you these nice little timestamps over here, and I want those timestamps as well. Regardless of whether I want the timestamps, I need to know what order to read these files in. Right now, I believe they're being accessed in file name order, and I want to access them in the order in which they were posted, and then order them on the page, regardless of whether I'm at file stamps. So it's not so much the show timestamps next to each post that we want to accomplish. And this is helpful talking this through, because the real goal is order the posts by posted at date. And the things we'd want to do there is show timestamps next to each post, control the posted at date when writing the post. So that's actually going to be first. And then order the posts by posted at, and then show the timestamps next to each post. And then, like, the stretch goal, if we get there, would be make timestamps link. This is like a fairly advanced thing, because we're gonna have to generate a whole bunch more HTML and CSS, and I may want to, at some point, I'm gonna want to abandon my current like single Typescript. Let's see, this is wrong file. Let's go open Mumbler real quick. Oh, actually, I want to open the generator. So open the generator. The code that does this right now is amazingly simple. So yeah, it's like 60 lines of code right now to grab the files and generate the HTML. So at some point, we're probably going to want to make this a little bit more sophisticated. And yeah, we'll have to decide. I was thinking about like adopting some form of framework or that kind of stuff to handle more advanced things like routing. And let me see, close those up. I'm talking about funding public goods. We'll come back to here. Make timestamps link to a page for each post. So Linus actually has a really neat way of doing this. He makes the stream.cpis.com. I really like this. This is a link to just this post, so you can like click on the time and you get to just this post, or you can click on the day and you get all posts from that day, which is kind of cool. I don't know that he's actually ever had a day where he had multiple posts. 8, 7, 5, 5. Oh, here's one, 5, 5. So on the 5th, he had 1, 2, 3 posts. Cool. And so you can see all the posts, the updates from 2022 5, 5. I think what we'll start out with is just make the whole timestamp link to a page for each post individually. The really handy thing about this is being able to deep link into a specific update. So I'm a big believer in having like strong URL structures that allow us to share what we're writing with other people, especially like you may want to repost some of these posts to Twitter or something along those lines. Helpful to have a URL to be able to do that. Okay, so now that we have our goal, what we want to accomplish, let's dive into accomplishing that goal. Now, before we do, we are I'm just going to make a note up here. Blocked by versions. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so what are versions and why does it matter? Well, something I learned about decentralized file systems is pretty interesting here. So let me show you something in Drive Fission codes. So this is the application I was talking about on the board a second ago that allows you to kind of look at or debug your, let me make a note to myself, after stream to-dos, I need to decrease the bit rate for the stream to match YouTube. Anyway, my little control panel over here is like giving me an error or a warning that, hey, your bitrate is too high. Yeah, so I need to look at that later. I want to make sure that I do that, put that in a place that I can get back to it, and then move on. All right, so I was telling you about Drive. Drive's cool, and then it allows me to inspect the IPFS file system I have. So here's my public directory, and then there's my posts, and then there's the 3 posts that are there. Now, you might notice something that is rather interesting. Here are the 3 posts that are here. 1, 2, 3. There's this thing that says big chunky header. This is actually, if you can do an inspect real quick, it is an H1. Now, what that means is that it was written in Markdown with a single hash tag, which corresponds to which will render an H1 in HTML when you do a Markdown to HTML rendering. Now, let's go over to Fission Drive and look at that very same post. Paragraph of interesting text. Wait, this has got a big thing at the top, some test post, and the big chunky header is a bold text. What's going on here? That doesn't look like this post. There's no title up at the top, and there's no bold text here. What the heck? This is actually an H1, not a bold. Well, I'll tell you what's going on. The way that Mumbler Generator works is it grabs files from IPFS. Now, IPFS is a decentralized file system that works like this. So let's jump over to the whiteboard and steal part of my whiteboard back from our architecture diagram. So IPFS is a content addressed file system. What does that mean? It means that in order to get the address of any particular object in the file system, be it a file, a folder, anything, you have you take a hash of that file's contents, and then that becomes part of the URL. That becomes actually the address. So this is called content addressed, or content addressing. I'll just leave it at that. IPFS is content addressed. Now this has some unique and interesting ramifications. So the one ramification is that if you have a file, and we'll say it hashes to A1, B2, something, then to get to this file, you have some URL structure, maybe it's some gateway, whatever, and then you have A1, B2, ... Not very human readable, but it explicitly, this URL points to this file. Now, what happens if you change a few letters in that file? Well, if you know anything about the way that cryptographic hash functions work, is if you hash the contents of this file after changing it, you will get an entirely new hash. Let me leave that arrow off for a second just to accentuate what's going on here and kind of draw out the problem or the opportunity or the interesting thing about content addressing. Now you get another hash, C3D4, whatever. Now, this hash also has a URL structure that you can refer to. C3D4 ... and that points to this file. This URL does not point to this file. It points to this one. This URL does not point to this file. It points to this one. These two files are related to each other how? Well, this is like a later version of this file. Like I made a few changes here. But unless you have something like WebNative, like if this was just straight up IPFS without WebNative, these two files don't know about each other at all. WebNative actually handles this for you in providing continuity or versions over time when you do things like make changes. Now, the really cool thing about this is that when you use WebNative to store and update files, you get version control for free. It's built in. It's a first class side effect, implication, whatever, of content address file systems. It's that they automatically retain all previous versions. And the way that WebNative is architected, you get pointers back to previous versions for each file. I haven't leveraged the versions with pointers back functionality in WebNative, so I don't know how easy it is to use. Also, there's some like weird permissions stuff. There, like permission lays on top of this content addressing in some interesting ways, such as like you're able to give permission to a specific version of a file and no earlier versions. I don't know how that would actually work in practice when it comes down to the actual library. I know that that's possible, that is an intentional architecture choice on behalf of the library, but I don't know what the actual developer experience for that would be like. And maybe that's something that we'll get to experiment with later, is like actually giving permission to edit one file. Now, how does that relate to what we're doing with Mumbler Generator? Well, you remember that I said it is grabbing a sort of folder of Markdown files. That is the ugliest folder ever. Come on, man. Your whiteboarding skills. All right. Let me make it a proper looking folder. Or just give up and like embrace the bad folders icon. All right. So there's my Markdown files that are in my fancy little folder. And this Mumbler Generator is going to read from this folder. So I mentioned that the content address for a file is a hash of its contents, which gives you its URL. What about folders? Turns out a folder is just a pointer to a bunch of files. Let's gloss over that for a second. A folder is a folder, contains files. But you hash the contents of the folder, more or less. Again, I'm glossing over a few things here, such that if any file in the folder changes, the content address for the folder itself changes. So if you add or remove a file, so a folder is actually its address can change in the same way. So like, let's indicate that over here. So we've got our folder, it's pointing to these two files, and it has a hash address of, to follow my funky naming scheme, E5F6 something. And so we've got our URL over here of E5F6. And it points to this folder. Now what happens if I add a file to this folder? So come down here, step 2, we've added a file to this folder. Now it points to this file, and that file. Oh my goodness, 3 of them. The hash is now something different. G7H8, this is getting old. And there is a URL that is different as well. G7H8, which now points to this. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. Mumbler Generator, our little static site generator, is pointing to what? It is pointing to a folder containing Markdown files, but I'm using this form of content address URL. And that's where, if we go over to the board here, or go back to our codes here, you will see what I'm referring to. And this is where I was making some changes. All right, let's go ahead and stash those changes now, because we're at the point where I want to, yep. So here's how this code works. we go, we start up IPFS using this little command right here. Gosh, this code is so badly organized. I really will refactor this code into like something nicer at some point. But remember, last time we like hustled up, got it working, and now here we are. So this is, and we'll go ahead and add a little comment here. The CID for the folder containing the Markdown files. You're so smart, GitHub Copilot. All right, let's see. So this little hash right here, like I just mentioned, is referring to this folder. And so, uh-oh, I changed some files. Oh noes. Now what do I do? Because now there's a different CID. So for example, like let's go over to like Drive. Drive does a really handy thing of actually showing you the CIDs. So you can come over here, right click and click copy CID. Let's go see what that says. BAFY, BEID, whoa, BEIH. This is a different, just to make it really clear. Whoop, 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 whoop. That is a different hash. Doe. Because, so this, the reason that we're seeing different versions is that this pointer points to a previous version of the file system, where it's pointing at a folder containing Markdown files that are old, outdated versions of the Markdown file. So what are we gonna do? Gosh darn it. We have a problem here, which means that every single time we make changes to any of the files, add, remove, update, any changes within that folder, then a new hash will be generated. And so in order for Mumbler Generator to work, we actually have to update this CID every single time. That's a hassle. Like, it's awesome that we get version control by default. That is super cool. Of like the fact that all previous versions are available, that I can point to any like composite versions of it. Really, really fun and fancy. Where it's not so nice is that I have to figure out a way to refer to that folder. So there are some ways to do this. One of them is called Dns Link, which basically gives a named a name. So this is now, right, we're talking about content addressing on the whiteboard here a second ago. Now we're talking about name addressing. The most common name addressing that you're used to is DNS, right? jessmart.in. I was telling you that that is the URL of my website. That is always the URL of my website, even when my website, the content of my website changes. So my website is not content addressed, it is name addressed. And that is what the universal resource locator of, you know, an actual DNS name, domain name service. The domain name service says, hey, this domain name points to this IP, and I can change the IP anytime I want. And the domain will continue to point to that. So this is a long way of saying we have a problem with the way that our script works in terms of content addressing. And also, this is another thing. If you remember, and then I'm going to go on break in just a second. I see you screaming at me, Pomodoro. This was the whole point of working on this project. The whole point was to start to develop an intuition around decentralized applications and the implications of working with decentralized protocols and libraries and platforms like IPFS. One of the implications is that you have to deal with the fact that content is addressed by the hash of the content, and so you need another layer of being able to refer to things by name. So you have to kind of think about these two different ways of routing. We are going to dive into DNS Link, but not today. Today we're going to focus on file metadata, which is another interesting thing working with IPFS, and that allows us to more directly accomplish our goal of actually getting the files ordered by post date. But I just wanted to share, we are going to just like manually update that SID every single time. We'll come back to name-based addressing probably next Wednesday, but I wanted to go ahead and like share that with you as soon as I discovered it, and especially because you're going to see me like going into Drive and like right-clicking, copy SID, going in and updating that SID line there throughout the session today, and you're like, if you wanted to know like, what the heck is he doing that? That's why I'm doing that, because the content of that folder will change. And obviously that's not a feature we need another way for Mumbler Generator to point to a stable location that will get updated, that will always get updated every time the content of that location changes. So anyway, long way of saying decentralized applications are weird relative to working with non-decentralized applications, and we're learning about some of that weirdness and awesomeness at the same time. So Pomodoro break. It is now time for the first 5-minute break. I'm gonna go take a break, and I'll be back in 5. And yeah, I'll see you at the end of that break. Bye. Alrighty, been about 5 minutes and our Pomodoro break is over. I got a quick bite to eat and some water, and now it is back to it. So let's go ahead and start our next tomato Pomodoro thing. All right, so we talked in the last Pomodoro about sort of our overall architecture of Mumbler, this decentralized application. We talked about content addressing on IPFS, and so we now know that we have this weird thing that we're going to have to solve, which we'll probably work on solving next week, around the pointer to that content addressed thingy. And for right now, what we're going to do is go copy the SID from Fission Drive and replace this one with the new one. Update to point to the new contents of the folder. Kind of lame that we're gonna like roll forward with that, but we want to focus on our goal for the day. And just as a reminder, what's our goal? So we want to order the posts by posted at date. Now this takes us down another IPFS rabbit hole. That'll kind of be a theme of our today's fun times here, which is how are timestamps handled in the interplanetary file system. So my naive expectation, and from looking at the actual library, is that each file would have a timestamp on it for the time it was created and updated, very similar to your normal file system. So if I long list the contents of the Mumbler directory, you'll see that each of these files has a file stamp associated with it, which is the last updated time for the file, for that file. And so my naive first thought around how am I going to handle this, like ordering the blog posts, is I'll just pull the timestamps from IPFS and I'll order the blog post in that timestamp and I'll present that as the published at date. I had already kind of thought that maybe I don't want to do that long term. Maybe I want to be able to control the published at date. That way I can make an edit to a file or a post at a later time, but I can keep the posted at date tied to the original time at which it was posted, especially since, yeah, so that was kind of my thinking. Turns out that there is a timestamp in here. Let me see if I have the code that is running it. Well, if we just do file entry dot, turns out this thing called mtime is here. And I did a deep dive on this, and I'll kind of like warp you to the end here of that deep dive, which is that mtime is used on IPFS sporadically. In fact, you'll notice there's this little question mark here. That's because we're using Typescript, and Typescript needs to know when things are nil, such that it gives you warnings about, hey, you're using something that could be nil, in a way that will cause JavaScript to potentially throw like catastrophic errors. That's my rough hand wavy, I'm just learning TypeScript, or learning TypeScript actually how it works. But anyway, that question mark means that mtime can be nil. Mtime being nil, what would that mean? If you have a file that doesn't have a file stamp, like, or a timestamp on it, and basically IPFS uses mtime sporadically. There's a specific library around IPFS that emulates a Unix file system, and I don't know in what context it's actually used, but that's where mtime is used. Unfortunately, the WebNative library also does some weird stuff with mtime, and so I thought maybe WebNative actually supported it. This is like after Googling it and like diving into the actual code in the WebNative library, I found out that mtime, while it looks like it's being used and you would think it might be the way that you want to do it, isn't actually supported. Yeah, more or less that's the rough summary. It's not quite supported in the WebNative library. But this led me to a bigger question. In talking with Brooke and Philip and Stephen and a couple of people who have worked on, I guess this is Brooke and Stephen mainly, who have worked on the WebNative library, the assumption is that there's this bag of metadata that I could store information in about that, about files, and then I could pull that metadata out. It's basically like a key value store that you could store whatever you want on within that file. And then that would get written into a sort of generic metadata container that each file in IPFS has. And at first, when I first heard that, I was like, great, that sounds awesome. And it looks like that facility is supported in WebNative. Looks like it is. It may or may not be. It's not something that's documented. And the code around it was a little bit ambiguous. I don't think anyone's tried to use it. So there was kind of some back and forth among the WebNative core team around whether and how that is the way that this should be handled. But as I got to thinking more about sort of file systems and files and longevity here, I realized that what we should probably do is we should let each file store the metadata about that file in the actual file's contents, not in the sort of implementation details of the way that IPFS works. So there's kind of two ways to handle this. We could either store a separate metadata file alongside each file that's there, that's its own file and file type, or we could sort of bundle the two together. Now, why do this? Well, the number one reason I kind of came to this architectural conclusion, and again, just to kind of like, as a visual person, just to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here, we would basically have a file, and we could either store the metadata. My initial thought was that we would store the metadata in the IPFS sort of mandated or provided facility for metadata. But the problem with that is it doesn't actually store it in the file. It stores it sort of in the IPFS representation of the file. So there's an IPFS thing. It says like file name, blah, 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 and then the content, and then points to this, and then there's like metadata. And that's like a key value store that stores all stuff. And the main reason I thought, and so then that's one option. One option. Two option would be take the file and divide it into metadata and then content. And then the third option would be to have a metadata file that's stored alongside. So here's content, and then metadata, just another file. But we'd say it points to this file. I think options 2 and 3 are superior, and here's why. Basically, portability. If I were to pull the Markdown files off of IPFS and store them on another file system, if I were to download them locally, if I were to do any of those things, the metadata would stay in IPFS unless I manually wrote this script to scrape the metadata and then like preserve it as well. Whereas if I embed the metadata into the file or have an associated metadata file that's on the file system, when I grab all those files and pull them onto another file system, I've preserved the metadata. And the metadata is presumably important. So the long and short of this is IPFS supports things like mtime and metadata for timestamps, and I am not going to use it. The really interesting thing, though, from a decentralized nature, is that the mtime at which a file is written to the file system, what does that actually mean for a decentralized file system? Now, you might remember from my architectural diagram that I said I am incorrectly drawing IPFS as a single block, when really IPFS is a network of nodes. So you should think of IPFS as like all these different nodes that communicate with one another, right? It's like BitTorrent or any other peer-to-peer protocol where these guys all share data and distribute it around there, and then when you go to access it, you hit one of these nodes, and then it looks to see if it has it. If it doesn't, it looks around to its neighbors. It's like this decentralized protocol. Well, when I'm writing a file, I'm writing it to a single node, and then it gets propagated. What does mtime refer to? Does it refer to the time at which it's written to the very first node? Does it refer to the time on each individual node? Does it refer to something different of like, and then furthermore, is time the same across these different nodes? So you end up getting into really weird philosophical issues like relativity and things like that, of like, wait, yeah, there is no like absolute version of time that could be replicated across these different nodes in the IPFS network. And so you could get really weird stuff where you like have this M time is written here, and then yeah, the time is way more complex in a distributed system where with with a local file system, the timestamp actually makes sense from it's the time at which that file was written to my local file system, sort of in my local file system's sort of notion of time. So time is a consistent idea within a bounded reality. It's like really, really weird implication of working with IPFS. And so you, even if this M time is populated on files that are in IPFS that you're ever messing with, you should probably not trust it because time in a decentralized system like that is not. Yeah. It's just weird. It's just weird. So anyway, that's a sort of little digression on IPFS metadata and the M time field on IPFS and why we are taking a different approach today, which is we are going to follow the approach of embedding the metadata into our Markdown file. Now, the really nice thing about this is that there's already sort of a standard, more or less, as much as there's a standard for anything in the Markdown community of using what's called YAML frontmatter. Actually, the standard is more around frontmatter. YAML or JSON are left up to the consumer. So there's a way of using this idea of frontmatter at the beginning of your Markdown file and then having the contents be below it. And we can make that frontmatter be Markdown, or sorry, JSON or YAML. And I'm going to basically look at the parsers that we're using now and see which one it supports, and then we'll just go with that. Again, we won't take the third approach of having a separate metadata file stored that's pointing to each piece of content. We'll just embed it in the file itself, and then we can hide that metadata from the actual post. And then the nice thing is this becomes like a human readable, human writable set of metadata that we can modify in the future, that we can add things to. Right now we're only going to have the posted at, but we may want to have things like title and other weird stuff as well. All right, so here we are finally writing some code 48 minutes into our session here. But there was a lot of learning, which was the whole point of writing this application, that's happened in the last week around these sort of decentralized applications, and wanted to share that learning with you guys. So here we are. So we need to start by looking at the library we're using for parsing HTML or parsing Markdown. We don't have to use this facility, but if Marked happens to have facilities in it for parsing frontmatter, we probably want to take advantage of those. There are several different JavaScript-based parsing tools that would allow us to parse the Markdown into HTML. So we could also switch tools. I think there's 3 or 4 that are fairly well used. But let's see what this supports, and then we will look at possibly switching. And then we'll work our way from what the parser supports to actually updating Mumbler to writing that Markdown, writing that frontmatter into the to the file. All right, so let me see. Let me just do a search here for frontmatter and see if we can go straight to it via the magic of Google. Oh, that don't look good. So let's see. Options. What else could it be called other than frontmatter? So there's headers, renderer. They might be relying on me to, I may end up having to peel the frontmatter off myself and then feed the remaining content into Marked. That's probably okay. Let's see. I'm misremembering. I know I actually use YAML frontmatter in my personal blog, my personal website for posting different research posts. So let's go there real quick. JessMartin.Gatsby. Zooby doo boo boo. I think they're under static content. No, source. Source, Markdown pages. Yeah, look how like even GitHub, when it formats Markdown, it formats the front matter as a page, or sorry, as a table. Let's check this out. Like if I go to raw, you'll see that, yeah, there we go. So it looks like the convention looks like 3 dashes, key value, this looks like YAML, and then 3 dashes again, and then we start the content. So that's probably what we're gonna do, is do these, but I would really love for that to be supported. Well, let's think about that for a second. Does it make sense for Mark to support front matter parsing? Probably not, because the whole point of Marked is to generate HTML, and what would that mean? Yeah, so that probably, Marked is probably the wrong place to look. Well, let's see where our Googling takes us. JavaScript, Markdown, parse, front matter. There's an article from 2001 about it. Remark plugin to support remarks, a newer formatter. Interesting. You can do it in YAML or TOML. TOML is another markup language. It's pretty simple. Unified plugin to support blah blah blah. ESM only, that's fine. This is interesting. Look at there, the formatting here. 3 pluses instead of 3 dashes. Wonder, wow. Again, nothing standard in Markdown land. An object with a type. So let's look at the, whoops. So we might want to switch to Remark and install this plugin. One preset or matter or an array of them. Matter defined as, aha, there's the marker. Got it. Okay, so weird. I wonder if that's normal, where TOML has pluses, kind of looks like a T, and YAML has dashes. That would be an interesting convention slash, golly, so strange. Configure remark from YAML configuration. Support GFM. Auto link literals. That might be. I might want to actually use GFM just because I like task lists. And right now I'm not. Well, yeah. I mean, like the whole point of this stream was to be a really, really dead simple posting mechanism. I actually don't want to get too complicated with it. Let's see. Here is a separate. Let's see how old this thing is. Not updated in like 6 months. 200 commits or so. Quick glance at issues. Dead project. Very large size and browser bundle. Front matter date parsing oddities. Yeah, this might not be. It's a lot of downloads, a lot of usage, some stars. FS read file system. We do want to use this from within Node where we're running it, as opposed to within the browser. Contains the original YAML string. Attributes contains in JSON form. This looks all right. Let me just jump into dead project and see if they're okay. Cool. He's not saying it doesn't work. He's just saying, yeah, dead project. Oh, the tragedy. This morning I was actually spending time thinking about how we could better solve this problem of like supporting libraries that don't have strong economic incentives for, but are being used and downloaded. What do we see on this page? 2 million times a month. And yet it's hard to find out how to maintain these things. Amazing. Amazing. Okay, so we basically have two choices. I'm probably just gonna like go with remark because gosh, in looking at the different Markdown parser sort of worlds, it looks like remark is probably the way forward, and it might make sense to go ahead and switch over to it. And we can, yeah. I really quickly threw marked in last time. If you were with me last time, it was like a really quick decision of like, grab one, which one, Google marked, boom, go. But in terms of like reading more, I think remark's probably the better way. And then we can always add that plugin to, looks like it's probably better maintained, and use the remark plugin for frontmatter. Okay, so that's what we'll do. Let's see, let me go add a couple things from our checklist here. Parse the frontmatter using remark frontmatter plugin. We'll need to swap out the remarked parser for remark. And yeah, let's see if we can get this working. Then we can do those other things. Okay. So now we're gonna hop in here. Let's do an npm uninstall marked npm install. Was there like a getting started here? Remark. Examples turning Markdown into HTML. All right, remark is an ecosystem. A different ecosystem is rehype. Following example turns Markdown into HTML by combining both ecosystems with remark rehype. Man, maybe I'm going too far here. All right, we're gonna find out in a second. Support for GFM and frontmatter. Here we go. So I'm gonna need a bunch of things then. Okay, let me read just a minute before we jump into this. When should I use this? If you just want to turn Markdown into HTML, we recommend micromark instead. Remark, interesting. Okay. Micromark is also within the ecosystem. Does it support frontmatter? Yeah. Okay. Wow, glad I read that. Yeah, I don't actually want the full abstract syntax tree that something like this provides. That would be pretty much overkill. So we will not use that, but we will use micromark instead. Cool. Micromark lets you change Markdown syntax, yes, but there are alternatives. The alternatives are often better. I just want to turn it into, yeah. Using and abusing Markdown to add meaning, adding extensibility. All right, just scrolling through this really quickly to see if anything jumps out. Micromark supports extensions. Where was that examples? Here we go. To support GFM, use this extension. All right, here we go. So we'll do an npm install micromark. And I'm not going to use GFM just yet. Let's get back to our sort of existing functionality, and then we will micromark. Then we'll look at extending the functionality we have. Looks like this is actually going to be pretty straightforward, which is pretty exciting. We only have 48 seconds left in this particular thing. Let's see if we can get this working with 48 seconds we have remaining. Okay, so this will look like micromark, pass in content. Let's see if there's like a more basic example up here. Yeah. Don't need any extensions, don't need any HTML extensions. So that should do it, actually. Had anything else about marked in here? Delete that comment, I guess. Okay, let's run it and see what happens. Let's give ourselves a few extra minutes just to see what the run here does, and then go from there. So this would be npm run default, runs our whole script, including remark, and oh, boom. What is this? Require a USM module. I'm probably importing remark improperly. Error require USM. TS node. Which library is throwing this error? It doesn't like my use of process.exit. Okay. All right, well, I thought I had tested with that. I'm a little surprised to see that. So the problem is that this, whoa, now that's really strange. Okay, let's see what has changed. npm run default. Let's take a couple of steps back here. Here, I know what we'll do. We will, just for a second, yank, copy. Let's just insert the actual, oh, I need to copy this whole thing here. Let's just try inserting the actual HTML. Or sorry, not actual HTML. Actual Markdown, not untransformed, into the block, into this, and just see if we can get it running. So I'm going to comment this out, and we're going to do that. So this again. I just want to see why this isn't running. Okay, so now I've commented out micromark to try and understand if that was the problem. I don't know that the process.exit is. I feel like that error message is probably a red herring. So, all right, npm run default. Okay, so micromark. Something about the way that I'm including micromark is actually a problem. Did I misread the import micromark from micromark? No, that looks good. I'm pretty sure I have some setting incorrect in my TS config. Again, this is still learning TypeScript. Starting IPFS. Oh, okay, cool. That actually might have successfully run. So you might remember that we updated our SID address to point to the new. So I would actually expect the contents of public to have changed. ls, or I can't remember if I checked them in or not. Oops. Get diff public. Did I check them in? Cat get ignore. No, public is checked in. So I'm surprised that the contents of public didn't change. Let's go to our little browser here, refresh. Sure enough, public did not change. So it looks like it didn't update. Let's see, where are my other console log statements? Ah, here we go. So maybe this, it looks like we're not parsing any files. Okay, so we've definitely got a bug. I'm gonna go ahead and take our Pomodoro break now. We're already a minute over into the break time. So I'm gonna take a 5-minute break and then I'll be back. And then we will figure out what the bug is here and finish swapping out marked for remark. And then we'll add remark, the frontmatter plugin, and hopefully parse that posted at date. And then we can order our blog post from there. All right. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Alrighty, welcome back to the stream. A quick restroom break. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the next Pomodoro. Again, we are 2 Pomodoros into our 4 Pomodoros of work today, so we're an hour into this 2-hour working session, and now we're going to take a look at the problem we were having right before that break, which is we brought in a new library called MicroMark to do our Markdown to HTML conversion, and we were looking for something that supports frontmatter, but unfortunately when running that program, hey, there we go. Huh. So it just was super slow. Interesting. Okay, so our program is running, which is awesome, and process.exit is working, so that was a red herring error message around process.exit. But for some reason, using MicroMark to bringing in MicroMark for some reason caused the thing to not compile. So now I'm going to go through and recomment out or uncomment the MicroMark usage, and then let's run this program again and see if we get the same problem. We do. Okay, so I don't see, there it is. Okay, no. Yes, requires ESM. What the heck did that mean? Thought I was using ESM. Let's go look at my package.json, the Typescript config file in here. Oh, no, I had not specified modules here. That's confusing. Okay, is that in my stash? Git stash. I don't know. Okay, well that's reasonable. There's no specification of modules here, so we need to do that. I think it looks like this module, and it would not be common.js, right? It would be module. There we go. Type. There we go. Oh, whoops. That's in package.json? Okay, I am right now, this is copy paste coding, y'all. I'm not clear what I'm doing here. A little bit frustrated with the bundling ecosystem here and all that I'm having to learn and run into, but this is the reality. npm run default, unknown file extension. What? So apparently adding package.json type module made things even more unhappy. Oh, goodness. Oh, maybe that main is a problem there. See, the thing is, I'm running TS Node here so that I can like directly execute the, so there is no emitted JavaScript here. This feels wrong. All right, ESM Typescript config. I think there's something I need to configure in my ESM, or sorry, my TS config file, not what was going on there. Yeah, module. New setting. Huh. A new setting in package.json called type. Type can either be, this setting controls whether .js files are interpreted as ES modules or JS modules. Yep. We're gonna want ESM to overlay the way TypeScript works in the system. I wonder if this is gonna cause a problem with TS Node, which I was also. Oh yeah, yoy. The type field in package JSON is nice. I don't care about CommonJS interop right now. This has got to be the worst part of JavaScript right now. Like, ugh. Exports. Good grief. Cutting edge, baby. Cutting edge. This is what it looks like to work in this ecosystem. I think there's got to be a way. I thought there was a way around this that just leveraged the tsconfig file. And so I'm going to try that. I thought it was, yeah, target. I think it's using two different settings called module and target, which doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. What? We don't want CommonJS. I think it's like ES next or something like that. So let's try that real quick, because why not? We'll just poke at this until it works. To load an ES module, you must set it or use the MJS extension. Doggone it. I bet TS node type ES modules. Golly, the amount of time you spend on packaging. Super frustrating. Okay, so let's go to, it's telling me to do it here, so trust that that is true. And then we have to figure out how to get it running here. Which doesn't like my TS thing here, I'm guessing. Module ES next, which is what I just did. Finally, if we convert the JS files into ES module, we can't convert into import. It's about running TS node for module code. Yes, that is exactly what I'm running into. The short answer is that the APIs to allow that aren't yet in Node, so I don't think TS anything can do anything about this for now. Thanks. All right, 2020. Let's fast forward to the very end of this issue and see why the heck it got closed. The issue still happens in 2021. Probably an issue with this. Sorry to say, but the way ESM was added to Node is a total disaster. Yeah, agreed. Not sure if this is a general or... Wait. I'm confused. Why is this closed? So there is a solution. Here we go. Compiler options. What? Continue with CommonJS. Okay, so probably what I need to do here is stop using TS node and actually compile JavaScript and run those things, I'm guessing. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. Sad, sad panda. Okay, so let's see. Where do we want to stop? We are now down in one of those common rabbit holes that we fall into when doing development. Okay. I was trying to change this light bulb, but now I'm doing this other thing. Okay, so pulling ourselves back from this, let's try to walk through it and figure out if we can find a way around the problem. All we need to do is run this Typescript file. Like, that's what we need to do. in order to run the TypeScript file, it actually runs as JavaScript, which means we need to compile it using the TypeScript compiler, which is this TSC, and then execute those JavaScripts using Node. Now, I was using TS Node to do that, but there certainly are other ways to do it. So we could use TSC to generate our JavaScript and then use Node to execute the JavaScript. And then I think separating those two things will probably solve the problem. So let's see, we'll go to the TypeScript node starter, which is a repository that Microsoft puts out for how to organize a basic TypeScript application that runs in Node. If we go in there and look at their package JSON, I don't think TS Node's going to be in here. Oh, there's that. It's weird. So they have the build step as TSC. And then they run a single, this is like running a single script. So I don't think that's the issue here. And then they have a run serve. They run that server that I ran earlier today to serve up those files. Oh, run serve. No, never mind. They're using server, their own little server called server.js. They have a linting step in here. Goodness, this is a super complicated example. Allowed to use default ES6 imports. So they have their modules set to CommonJS, but the target. Yeah, Brent says in the chat, the tsconfig file is usually where things get weird on projects like this. That has definitely been the case for me as I've been like diving in here. So, oh my goodness. And so the assumption here is that MicroMark only supports ESM and not CommonJS, something like that. And so trying to run this in CommonJS is going to be problematic. This surprises me. Maybe the interop stuff is what's going on, is what's allowing this to work. I'm going to do some more copy pasta coding here, and we're just going to drop in these three settings. And back over to our package JSON where we continue to have type module here. Doesn't feel right, even though the ES modules balance npm run default. Yep. So again, this is MicroMark screaming at me and saying, nope, you gotta, this has to be a, and then the file extension override because TS Node needs those file extensions. Okay, so now we're kind of, there was one, where was I that I just saw that solution? Did I close it? Did I Command W in anger? Let's see, TypeScript node starter, TS node fails. Yeah. So this is the one on the TS node repo. What we're going to do here is tsconfig file. Yeah, definitely. All right. So I'm going to go down to the solution here where he sets an override for TS node. Yeah, here we go. Am I using require anywhere? No, I'm not using require anywhere. Doop, doop. Yeah, just in TS modules. Whoa! Yes, I am. Oh, interesting. Oh, right. And why am I using JSDOM at all? JSDOM. Oh, right. This was a little tool for building up the DOM. Yes, I remember feeling weird about this now. And I actually even made a note here of considering replacing with linked DOM. So yeah, I am using require, and that Yeah, I recognized when I wrote this last time that like that was possibly going to cause a problem. Because I kind of either need to be in common JS land or in ES modules land and not in both. So that could be, let me look at linked DOM real quick. Linky DOM. I'm just trying to quickly see. I wonder, there's got to be a way to quickly understand. I mean, they have an import here as opposed to a require. So this looks like a better way to do. Oh man, swapping out libraries on the fly like this to try to get stuff to work makes me feel like a total noob. Ugh, so painful. All right. Okay, let's see. So what have we done so far? We have swapped marked out for micro mark as a way of parsing front matter. We could bring in, I could like walk back all these changes, go back to using marked, and use that other library that I found for front matter parsing. So there was, assuming that I could get that working, but it feels just like stacking libraries on top of libraries here. I'm almost tempted to, we could eject JS DOM totally, because I'm not doing anything interesting with JS DOM. In fact, the whole thing is to be able to specify this string here. Now wait, what else am I doing with JS DOM? I'm parsing the HTML from template.html, and then I'm basically doing a find replace in and so we could just do like traditional find replace and in my template.html file, do it manually and just eject this whole library, which honestly feels a lot better. I'm not sure if that's actually going to problem. Yeah, Brent recommends in the chat like trying and change this to import JS DOM from, and I've already gone down this path last time, and it was unhappy, not a happy path. I'll rename it so that I don't have to swap it in. Let's see. So I believe JS DOM does not support ES modules. Do 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 do. Brent says stacking libraries on top of libraries is the zen of Node. No, no. This is ugh. Yikes. It feels horrible. Can I use JS DOM with the S6 module syntax? There was a Huh. What? This looks crazy. Yeah, that's not right. Oops. Doggone it. So modules. Maybe it's ES6. What we would be under. Huh. Yeah, they have really old. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rip out JS DOM because that's something I wanted to do anyway. Like it, and I'm not sure that that's actually gonna solve our problem. Just because, yeah, I'm not sure it's gonna solve our problem. The problem is that MicroMark wants a pure. I think what's actually going on here is MicroMark fighting TS node. And what we probably want to do is actually just run TSC, compile JavaScript, and then run that with Node. And so I'm probably wasting time. by ripping out JS-DOM. I'm just going to make a note to rip it out, and let's see if we can get things working with MicroMark first. Rip out JS-DOM and do a manual find replace. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so then here in MicroMark land, got MicroMark working, or we have it, it should be working. We're gonna comment these out because those were things we added from the Typescript starter file. We are gonna change the way that our scripts run. So now we will run, we'll add a build step here, and we're gonna run TSC. And it probably needs all kinds of fancy flags that I'm not aware of. But we're just gonna do npm run build real quick and see what that does. Okay, that, whoops, not that. That's not what I wanted. That created a source. Would that be specified in my TS config? No, there's my include. No emit true. Okay, probably don't want no emit true, because that's not gonna emit anything when running the TypeScript compiler. Let's do it again. npm run build. Hey, hey, see the ghost over here? It means we've got something going on here. Source/main.js, awesome. And then let's like actually run npm. Oh, so we're also going to need another. Goodness gracious, Jess. We're also going to need another command for running that JavaScript that we just created, and then we can make one that like aggregates all these commands together. Thanks, Brent. Thanks for hanging out. All right. So this is going to run node./source/main.js. All right, and npm run. Maybe we should name that something else. Npm run. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Exports ES module true. Exports is not defined in ES module scope. This file is being treated as an ES module because it has a JS file extension. Package.json contains type module. Treated as a common JS script. Rename it to use the CJS file extension. So basically, this thing is being treated as a module, but it has no export itself. Which makes me wonder, why would I treat it as a module, except we've already addressed this, which is I want to treat it as a module because MicroMark wants me to treat it as a module. Thank you, MicroMark. Seriously questioning my commitment to this new library. So I think what I want here is I need to like export. Yeah, boom. npm run build. npm run. Oh, come on. I exported something. Not defined in module scope. All right, so I'm probably doing something wrong here around defining a module because I don't actually understand JavaScript modules. I found a great article on MDN Web Docs that kind of like walks through all of this. It's very long, and I have not read the whole thing. But I think the answer will be in here. So we want to scroll down to exporting module features. First thing you do to get access to module features is to export them. So do I want to, wait, right there, export default async function main. That's my export. That's strange. And then we have another const there. Confused. Why would that not? Alrighty, so now we are at the end of our third Pomodoro, and we have battled the likes of ES module support and have lost. I think what we're going to probably want to do, given that we have one Pomodoro coming up after this break, that'll wrap up our work session for today, what we're probably going to want to do is walk back from MicroMark, because it's giving us some pain here. Go back to using Marked and potentially look at that other library. And what I'll probably look at this week is getting some pairing time with somebody who's more experienced in navigating the vagaries of ES modules and the horror that is the JavaScript ecosystem right now, JavaScript, TypeScript madness, and see what the appropriate way to set this up would be. So anyway, 5-minute break. Last Pomodoro coming up. Thanks for hanging out with me as long as you have. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Start break. Here we go. Alrighty, welcome back. It's been 5 minutes, and now we are on our last Pomodoro. We have one 25-minute time period where we're going to try and get metadata working, and we have been focused on parsing the front matter from a Markdown file and turning that into, well, parsing the timestamp out of that Markdown that file, and then using that to order the blog posts on our blog. Unfortunately, the library that we were using, marked, to parse the Markdown file into HTML has no native support for front matter. And so we looked at a couple different approaches. One is adding a second library in addition to marked that would specifically focus on parsing the front matter. We probably are going to look at that on this one. Another one was going with a different Markdown parser altogether. There's the remark / micromark ecosystem of parsers. And we those actually have plugins that support things like front matter as well as GitHub flavored Markdown and other things. So we looked at using micromark. Unfortunately, micromark has a dependency on is only useful in the context of modules or something along those lines. Yeah, something that I don't understand yet. And so micromark, in swapping it out for marked, is not even running because of my failure to properly configure this Typescript project using ES modules and that kind of stuff. So anyway, we're in linking hell, which has been, if you want to look up DLL hell, that is linking projects and libraries and that kind of stuff has been a problem since the beginning of computers and the beginning of programming languages, and it's still a problem today, which is incredibly frustrating. So how do we get out of DLL hell as quickly as possible and get to actually delivering some value on this project is the question that we are faced with right now. And so let's start our last 25-minute Pomodoro here and see if we can actually make some real progress instead of fumbling with libraries. So again, we're using micromark. We also have this other, oops, this I need to roll back. This needs to be a require. Okay, there we go. Alrighty, let's run real quick npm. It's weird. Npm run build, and then npm run, and kind of see where we're at. Okay, so yeah, this exports is not defined in our ES module scope. Something about the way that I'm using ES modules is not correct. I was reading through this excellent post from MDN, really, about modules and trying to get my head around how this project should be configured when this project is basically a script. And so what I need to like rethink sort of the project structure here into what needs to be a module and what needs to just be a script that executes code while using code from those modules. Interestingly, while I was running through this, I ran into a bug, or like not a bug, a broken link here, simple set of examples, and opened a PR around that on the MDN content directory. So yeah, hopefully that little fix will be helpful for people. And then I was starting to dig into some of these examples, which is actually something I hope to do more of, is like understand how these work. But man, tell you what, guys, it's frustrating. And part of it, I think, is also the interaction between Typescript, the tsconfig file, and then this sort of ES module's new way of doing things. And I am not astute enough around all of this stuff to be able to sort of tease apart where the problems are coming in here for these various libraries that I'm taking advantage of. Okay, So what are we going to do in the next few minutes just to like try and make some real progress here? I'm going to go ahead and revert the changes that I made to tsconfig, including that one. And I'm going to revert the changes that I've made here to this. We're going to keep running things using tsnode, trying to run this guy. And we are going to swap out micromark for that other library that we found, that JavaScript Markdown parse frontmatter. This one, JXSOM. And we'll take a quick look at this, npm install. It looks like they are using the require format for this one, so this might be a problem. Issues. I don't even know how to appropriately Google for this. JS YAML. Woof. Reduce bundle size by upgrading JS YAML. Huh. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll try and get this working in the same way that I've shoehorned JS DOM in here with like a require statement. And again, the goal here is to get the end-to-end system working. Who cares about the stupid like library that's used to accomplish it? And then what we'll do is like once we have that end-to-end system working, we'll come back in and refactor by migrating to libraries that more align with the sort of the modern TypeScript ES modules stack that we want to be using here. Okay, all right, so let's do that. I'm in the middle of a stream right now, buddy.
Okay, I just went down in the chair.
If you're quiet, yeah. Okay, so let's see. And we're gonna do an npm install, and the thing we're installing is this weird frontmatter thing. Yeah. Alrighty, and then we'll do a require. Yoicks. Const fm equals require frontmatter. That brings in our frontmatter thingy, and then we are going to grab from the content some frontmatter data. Oh yeah, we also need to comment out this one because we're not using micromarked. Boy, we're going to have to go back to using marked, which means I need to go ahead and install that as well. npm install marked. All right, let's see here. So we've got marked, we've got micromarked, we've got frontmatter. And we've required frontmatter. So it looks like there might be a warning here. Or maybe converted to an import. Whatever. Okay. Our package is fine. Oh yeah, I'm going to turn off type. I'm going to revert that change to type module. And let's see. Transform the file's contents. Okay, we should be back at a running state here. I think for the let's see. I'm going to go look up the code for this. Could look at a previous version, but let's see. All right. How are we using it here? Mark.parse, that's what it was. Couldn't remember the name of the function that was on that. So there's mark.parse, which will parse the string. Okay, so I think now we're at something that should run. So let's go ahead and run that and see npm run default. And ideally, this will actually pull in the new, starting IPFS. So ideally, this will actually pull in the new content, which we discussed at the very beginning of this stream. Like we now have a new pointer to some new Markdown files that will generate new HTML. So we should see a change to the actual HTML files at the end of this, which we can then push and have those update our little mumbler.netlify.com. Excuse me. Oh, weird. Oh, interesting. Wait, did I push that change? I don't remember pushing that change. I must have. Interesting. So super cool. The continuous delivery pipeline in Netlify actually ran our. Looks like I must have pushed the change to the SID. Yep, I did. Update to point new contents before. I'm so used to like working on a branch and not working on main that I totally forgot that I had done that. What that did though is it updated the posts content, so they all have this as opposed to like how it looks locally. We refresh now, we should see the new one. Very cool. Okay. Anyway, that was a strange and interesting surprise. Is that we have the new format. Everything looks good there. So great. We now have a running copy again. So the actual logic of our program is going to have to change a little bit here. So right now we're getting a list of files from IPFS-LS, and we currently iterate over those files using this loop here. And what we're going to need to do is actually collect those list of files along with their timestamps, sort those files by the timestamp, and then generate the and then order, like insert them in order. So this is going to need to, let's kind of write a comment here, collect the files and their timestamps. And then we'll want to do a sort. So this would give us content, and we can push it onto a collection of files. So let Markdown files. And do we want to use a map? We could use a map. Wait, no, maps are not ordered unless we use I think there's like an ordered map type as well. Or we could use an array and sort things within the array. What we would have to do then is kind of like a two-pass process. So, and we could go ahead and store the strings natively in an array. I'm thinking about how to handle, we're going to have to do two passes anyway. Not necessarily. You know what? This little script can be slow. It's totally fine if it takes a little while to run. We're not optimizing for speed right now. So what we'll do is we'll grab the file's contents and we'll store them in Markdown files. What's the array facility? I think that's it. Push file entry or push content. So that's going to push the, we'll now have a list of Markdown files. And then what we want to do at that point is sort them. Yep, that's exactly what we want to do. How did it know that? I tell you, man, it's creepy sometimes. Wow. Guys, I'm just hitting tab here. That's flipping amazing. So what just that happened pretty fast. So I'll kind of give you the play-by-play of what just happened. I wrote, I didn't even write the content. I said collect the files and their timestamps, and then when I went to write a comment, GitHub Copilot said, or like printed out the following comment: sort the files by timestamps. I'm like, yep, that is exactly what I want to do. So I tab completed that comment. Again, not a comment that I wrote. GitHub Copilot wrote it. As soon as I tab completed, it gave me these following lines, one by one. So this is using JavaScript's sort function, where you pass in the two files, A and B, and then this is parsing the frontmatter. And look, it like used the frontmatter library to parse the frontmatter of each one of them, and then hopefully appropriately translated the date into a time. And then yeah, this this code looks right. It might have a subtle bug in it, but the crazy thing is that Copilot generated all of that, including the comment. So it was able to intuit my intentions based on that. Wild. And so then we want to parse the Markdown files into HTML. There we go. We get that same nice little, do an await there. Might need an await in front of this. Again, I'm still learning this whole async JavaScript world. So this is going to be marked.parse markdown file to string, and then we'll parse it. Go ahead and get rid of that other block. Okay, so that was, now what happens if we don't have front matter attributes for date? So we probably, if we don't have, how should we sort? So it's possible that, I mean, well, one, none of our current files actually have a markdown format for date. So we need to, I'm just going to make a note here to do handle empty dates. Right now, let's assume that they do. And in order to assume that they do, we should go and add them. So what we need to do is go to publish. We're going to add some, I don't like those H1s there, so I'm going to go ahead and replace those with thing. Oh, let's go look and see if the FM call to FM was correct. FM, yeah, it looks like it. FM data. Returns a content object with attributes body begin. Yeah, this all looks good. Okay, so that, let's go back over here and we're going to add our it looks like it's called date. Let's call it posted at. Since this is YAML, I think we'll use the underscore as opposed to camel casing. I can't even remember. If it was JSON, I would camel case it. And the date, how would a JavaScript date be formatted in order for that parse to work right there? Let's test it out real quick. Date, let's see, 2022-04-05, or there's my birthday from this year. Yeah, okay, cool. So we'll do, right now, we may eventually want to do timestamps instead, but we'll just do dates right now. So we'll do 2022-04-04. Let me close that. Let's copy that so we can use it again. Save that one. Now over here, change this to bold. Add the YAML front matter. We'll make this one posted on the 1st. Save that one. Over here, we'll change that to bold. Add the front matter, and we'll make this one posted on the 24th. So now they're ordered in this directory by name, but now they're on 3 different dates: the 4th, the 1st, and the 24th. So they're out of order, but we want to rearrange them such that in reverse chronological. Oh, that's interesting. We'll see what it does here. We're also going to want to get const post date equals FM. Yep, that's what we want right there. And then here we will what is it? It's this. Post date. Actually, let's go back over here to our thing and toString. What does that give me? Ooh, that's too long. There's a nice, like, isn't it sprintf or something, or printf, or let me look through these real quick. I want to format the date a little bit. I'm trying to remember how you do that in JavaScript. To locale uppercase. Interesting. Script format date. Yep. To locale date string. Sure. We'll grab that. And let's test it really fast. See what that looks like. I didn't think that looked right to me. To locale string. There we go. That looks better. All right, grab that. It's super gimpy for right now, but we're just going to see if we can get it working. All right, to locale string, blah, blah, blah. Got that. So that should insert it in our actual HTML. Okay, so let's see what we get when we run it. Run default. Oh, this should fail for null entries on date because we didn't update our pointer. Remember the very beginning of this live stream where we talked about things can change, and if you don't update the pointer, then your SID will be pointing to an older version of those files, which we just did. Actually, let me refresh this thing to make sure I have the most recent SID. Copy SID. Boom. Cannot read properties of undefined. because it didn't have front matter. Oh, we need to handle null front matter entirely. So this is handle empty date attributes. To do handle empty front matter. So it's possible that they're entirely empty. It's possible that it doesn't have the date attribute. And again, we also, yeah, we have several things going on here. Posted at is the thing we're going to use. Posted at. Oh, it looks ugly in here. I'll probably change it to, even though the standard can be more, we'll probably change it to camel case in the front matter over here. Okay, so now go to this directory. Oops. Posts, copy the SID, come back up here, paste it in. Now this should be pointing at the most recent versions of all those files. Let's run default and see what happens. Oh, we got about a minute and a half left in our work session, so we're coming to the end here, so hopefully this works. And we will at least have accomplished some of the things, even though we ran into some terrible time with libraries and such. All right, come on, come on, come on. So IPFS currently, one of the things that could be happening right now, by the way, is I've just updated the files. All right, now it's parsing, all finished. Oh man, look at this. Heck yeah. Let's come over to our thing. Nice. Okay, so this is working more or less. We now have, let's go over to our little to-do list for the day. We have control the posted at date when writing the post. Oh, so we haven't updated Mumbler to be able to control the posted at date. That's fine. We can update the front end now, now that we know this is working. But we are ordering the posts by posted at. You notice that the one on the 24th, then the one on the 4th, then the one on the 1st. So you see the most recent ones at the top. We are showing the timestamps next to each post, at least the date stamps. We may want to add time as well, but proof of concept, we now know this works. 5 more minutes. And we're making the timestamps link to a page for each post. Not yet. That was our kind of our stretch goal. You see the question mark at the end of that. So we've accomplished 2 of the 3 things, even though we ran into some like pain in the butt library linking errors dealing with JavaScript, Typescript, ES modules, common JS libraries, yada, yada, yada. So one of the things that's happy about this is that we have the rough sort of the structure of our code that we want. We can always change out this front matter library that we're bringing in here for something else. We can change out JS DOM. We can change out marked once we get the right ways to do these things. And we have the rough sketch of a thing that works and actually generates our thing. Now, why did I laugh so hard? What is tragic is that marked, our library for parsing the markdown, failed to parse or parsed the YAML front matter as if it were markdown. And I'm pretty sure marked doesn't know anything about markdown, front matter. And so we're going to have to either strip off manually the front matter, or when we switch to MicroMark, which has native support for front matter, then we can tell MicroMark to parse the markdown while ignoring the front matter at the beginning. Woo! Okay, well, it has been quite a ride today. Just a quick recap of kind of what we did today. We started off by talking about sort of the decentralized architecture of this, of our little decentralized blogging tool. We got Mumbler, we had a Mumbler Generator writing and reading files from the IPFS. Then we talked about some interesting characteristics of content addressing that happens on IPFS, where you got these SIDs that are based on hashes of the contents. And so we have to continually be able to point to the right thing in IPFS. And next time, hopefully, we'll actually work on name-based addressing so that we have a stable name that we can point to inside our IPFS file system, and that even as we change files inside of that folder, it always updates to point to the most recent thing. So that's going to be another fun little like exploring the intricacies of working with an IPFS-based decentralized file system. That was like content addressing and versioning. The next thing we looked at was a deluge, like diving into the way that IPFS uses metadata, and we talked about different structure or strategies for preserving metadata, where we decided to go with sort of the standard in the Markdown world of including the metadata as front matter at the beginning of the Markdown file. And then as we were doing that, we ran into all kinds of horrible problems trying to find libraries that mesh with that we were able to properly import and execute that would allow us to do this. So, but we got it working. So it actually does work. And I'm going to clean up a little bit of the code after this working session and go ahead and post it up. But thanks for hanging out with me on Coding with Jess. We'll be back next week to take the next step in writing Mumbler and seeing where things go. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them on the YouTube channel. And if you want to be notified about future sessions like this, you can actually subscribe at the bottom, and you will get notified when I'm doing this stream as well as others in the future. All right, have a great Wednesday and see you soon.